Good afternoon, everybody. And yes, I said good afternoon, everybody. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, and I am here with Xavier McKnight doing the real and the rare, a Thursday afternoon, I might add, Xavier. And as we do this broadcast, we figure this was a good opportunity to go ahead and provide a lot of folks with some good entertainment as we approach the weekend. So looking forward to making this dynamic work. We gave everybody an opportunity to enjoy what we have to offer tonight, but over the weekend. And what are your thoughts about the change?
I definitely believe that we're making a change to go now in a more positive direction with the real and the rare. We're going to grow this platform. We're going to get this platform to where we want it to be, as well as all of the other platforms that we have here on this great network.
Yeah, well, like I said before, the one thing that people should never be concerned about, if you feel you need to make change to better yourself, that's what you do. I don't care whether you're a janitor, whether you're working as a digital producer, or any particular occupation. Don't be afraid to make change, because you know what? You never know. Change can be better. Sometimes it could be worse, but change can definitely be better. But you have to go out there and give it a shot. And I'm very confident that the real and the rare will continue to grow in the magnitude for which we intended when we brought the broadcast on the network. Uh, and how we're going to continue to put it together moving forward. So, meanwhile, Xavier, we're going to lead it off. And once again, this broadcast, so you folks know, we'll be talking about the NBA. There's still some news out there. So I'm going to ask you a question, Xavier. Okay, should the NBA begin on December 22nd or on Martin Luther King Day on January the 18th?
I'm going to say that the NBA should begin on January the 18th. That's Martin Luther King Day. Normally, I would say no to something like that. But because of the timing of where the NBA season is, and when the NBA season officially came to an end after it was restarted due to the pandemic causing things to come to a halt and a pause back in March, they were able to get things back going there towards the end of July, start of August. Season just finished up a couple of weeks ago. They need to go ahead and delay this until at least January. It could be a catastrophic move if they decide to go into gameplay on December 22nd. Or it could be a move where you have many of your veteran players, many of your superstar players around the league who played in the NBA bubble decide, we're not going to begin the season on December 22nd. We're going to take a little more time off to allow our bodies to rest. That's not going to do good for the ratings. It's not going to do good for the revenue.
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer to start on Martin Luther King Day in mid-January. I mean, really, these guys have worked very, very hard. Not only the bubble was it mentally draining for them because of some of the social injustices that you have to deal with, but the NBA of all sports, these guys are unquestionably some of the best athletes in the world, and they do need their time for the body to recover. This is a tough year. I mean, when you consider that this league actually, we're talking, went for a good full year when you think about when it really began last October. Now, some teams, obviously, it ended much earlier, and then other teams ended up having to go a little bit later as they got deeper into the playoffs. So, but to start it in January, it's no big deal. From what I understand, I believe they're talking about a 72-game schedule versus 82 games. Is that what's being talked about?
That is what is being talked about, and maybe this could be the start of something that becomes a little more permanent going forward, and not just due to what everything is going on with the pandemic and everything that we have going on in regards to that. They've been talking for the past few seasons now and trying to figure out ways to shorten this regular season to maybe about 10 to 15 games less, and also possibly a potential different start time than starting in October. It doesn't do the NBA any favors when they're starting their season right in the heart of football season and right when postseason baseball is going on too.
Oh, no question about it. You want to talk about that? I think college basketball should start in the middle of December or even into January for all I care. Nobody cares about some of these tournaments all over the place. I mean, there's nobody going to compete against a National Football League. We know that to begin with. Pandemic or no pandemic, when they talk about fall, they're only talking about two things: Fall Classic and baseball, right? And the NFL or college football. Basketball, to me, wake me up when it starts in late December, early January, because that's what my mindset is. You know, football will always be king, and so will baseball during the months of September all the way up until December. And in the NBA's case, even though it won't become the case this year, every sport goes out there and owns a particular holiday. Case in point, okay, July 4th, owns by baseball. Auto racing, Memorial Day, right? Where you have the Coca-Cola 600, Indianapolis 500, baseball and football pretty much own Labor Day weekend. Thanksgiving, we know full well the NFL owns that one. Christmas Day, give it to the NBA. Everybody's used to going ahead and watching the NBA on Christmas Day, and they own that holiday. All right, so they don't have it this year. It doesn't matter. There has been nothing about 2020 that's been normal anyway, so what would it really matter to begin with? We talk about the Masters golf tournament usually being held, in April usually, Indianapolis 500 in May. We all know things are different, but when you talk about things in general, okay, every sport has a day that they can call their own where the stage is all there. So I don't think there's any question that the NBA should start this year on Martin Luther King Day. Obviously we have tremendous respect for Dr. Martin Luther King and what he's done with the civil rights movement, the Black Matters movement. And we've gone ahead and spoken about that numerous times here. And with all due respect, it's something that's important and has to be addressed. But so you might as well start the season on that particular day, especially during unprecedented circumstances here for which you're able to do it. Body allows time to heal. Up until then, don't worry about Christmas Day. But there's plenty of other holidays as well. So,
and it's one of the things I want to say to this pertaining to Christmas Day in particular this year. There are some people out there who are upset about the fact that we potentially won't have basketball on Christmas. I love watching the NBA on Christmas too, but this needs to just be brought into perspective here. For what 2020 has been, from the start of it to where we are now, to not knowing where we're going to be at the end of this year. We got a big day coming up next Tuesday, but I just want to remind everyone of that. We have a big day coming up next Tuesday, but we still have the rest of this year to go through as well. And it's felt like we have been walking through a twilight zone or playing the game of Jumanji all year long. I say all of this to say that this is one Christmas and this is one holiday season where if we can be surrounded by our friends, our family, and our loved ones, we need to put more of a focus on that than opposed to any form of entertainment that we can have to distract us from those types of things right now.
Let me tell you what, there won't be any shortage of entertainment anyways. We're talking about for the better part of several months, we didn't have any sports going on. I remember joking around earlier in the year. I didn't know what cornhole was until they started putting it on the air. And there were a few other sports I didn't know much about, but it really never mattered to me. We had to find a way just to go ahead and get a handle on things and take this whole pandemic in stride and doing what we've got to do. So with all due respect, I'm not here to badmouth 2020. Every year faces its challenges. We know that, okay? But, is this a year where we had a lot more extraordinary challenge? Yes. But the one thing we can all be thankful for is the NBA did an exceptional job with that bubble not having any positive tests. The National Hockey League did a great job having no tests. Major League Baseball weathered outbreaks. Okay, they got the season done. I don't care about the Justin Turner thing at the very end, big deal. But baseball did a good job recovering. The NFL and college football are dealing with it the best they can. And no, we didn't have March Madness this year, and we didn't have a lot of things going on. But it doesn't make any difference when you put things in perspective. Things happen for a reason, and that's what they're going to do. But the NBA did an outstanding. I was impressed with the work they did to keep their players safe, and I'm equally as impressed that the players bought into it. But they had to, and that when the Lakers won their championship, that they earned it. No asterisk or nothing. Okay, they definitely earned everything. No champion in 2020 should ever have an asterisk whatsoever because they had to work it. But back to the subject at hand, this is an absolute no-brainer. Start on January 18th. Give the bodies a chance to heal. Give the minds a chance to heal. Honor Dr. Martin Luther King, and then we'll get it going again. I personally don't have a problem with it being 82 games. It's just not meant to happen this year. Because remember, next year, the NHL will not have the Winter Classic, nor will it have the All-Star Game. But that's just, we're going to have that carryover effect. So I guess we can agree on the fact that Martin Luther King, Dr. Martin Luther King, we hope that it starts for good measure okay, on your day. You've earned it. Onward we go. Talk about Gail Miller and the Miller family have reached an agreement to sell the team to Ryan Smith, who's worth $1.6 billion. For a lot of you folks that want to know about the logistics of the sale, you know, what will be included in the sale is Vivint Arena out in Utah. You got Salt Lake City Stars, I believe the G League team, and you also have the LA Angels AAA affiliate, the Salt Lake Bees. It looks like the Miller family wanted to make sure that the Utah Jazz are going to stay rightfully where they belong. Some thoughts about the sale?
It feels like the time is right for the Millers to go ahead and make this sale. And I say that potentially because there was something that happened earlier this year, very significant to the Utah Jazz, that really left a hole and really left a void and really just felt like a true end of an era. And that was the unfortunate passing away of longtime Utah Jazz head coach Jerry Sloan.
Right.
Rest in peace to him. But it just feels like they are about to undergo a new era. Now, they have they do have a good basketball team. They got some good young stars there. They have a perennial playoff team. They've got one of the top 10, top 12 head coaches in the game right now, to me, and Quinn Snyder. And the fact that you have this younger person who's coming in who may be able to relate to the players and what they want to see necessarily a little bit more than maybe Gail Miller and the Miller family were able to do at that point. But it's a lifelong Utah Jazz fan, someone who's from that area, someone who's going to make sure that the team stays in that area. That's the most important thing. But, you know, I just want to take this time also to congratulate the Miller family on 3 decades of success of owning that organization. The only other organization in the NBA that has had a better winning percentage in the NBA since they have owned that team are the San Antonio Spurs.
And it's not their fault that when they made it to the NBA Finals, they ran into a buzzsaw named Michael Jordan. You ever heard of him? From last I heard, Michael Jordan's a pretty good player.
Yeah, they don't call him the GOAT for no reason.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
those who agree with that anyway.
Well, that's okay. That's something that we'll talk about in a future edition of the Sports Exchange. I would welcome a debate with you and another guest talking about that. But yeah, the Jazz have been with Jerry Sloan, and prior to that, I believe it was Frank Layden who coached them prior to that. They've been a model of success. They took a franchise in New Orleans, the Jazz, and moved it to Utah, and they've done really well with that franchise. They really have. I still often wonder why the Utah Jazz didn't change their name to something conducive to the area. But then again, if I'm going to sit there and make that comment, I might as well say the Minneapolis Lakers and the LA Lakers, they didn't change the name. They kept it with them, but the success followed the franchise nevertheless, in championships and consistent play on the court. And they've had a really good tradition. I got to tell you, many years ago, I saw a couple of games at the Salt Palace when Karl Malone was there. It was, I think, a 10, 12,000 seat building. I enjoyed it. In fact, I got to tell you, on a really interesting trip there, I saw a couple of Jazz games, and then I saw a hockey game there or at the Salt Palace. And I was on the radio one time talking about my drive around the country, which encompassed over 10,000 miles in 30 days. And one guy had me on during an intermission. It was pretty fun, actually. I enjoyed doing it. You know, I didn't plan to go on there, but when I told the guy I was from the Detroit area driving all over the country, and I only had so many states to go before I hit all 50 and knocked out the Continental 48 on one trip, they had me on during an intermission. It was pretty good. But you know what? That's been a good franchise for a lot of years. And like anything else, like the Buffalo Bills stayed put in Buffalo, you know, at least the Utah Jazz are in good shape for a long time. So more power to the Millers. They deserve the opportunity to go ahead and sell it to a local businessman that'll keep the franchise stable for a while. Let's talk about Daryl Morey. Changed area codes to the Philadelphia 76ers. He's a president of basketball operations. He gets a 5-year deal to run the franchise. Elton Brand remains the general manager. Some thoughts about Daryl Morey, who probably won't get a Christmas card from those people in China, but he's certainly getting a 5-year deal to try to get Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons and the rest of that dysfunctional group on the right path, with Doc Rivers leading the charge.
Well, I'm very surprised that he's coming back into the game this soon. I thought that he would have taken a year off for some of the reasons that we heard that he stepped down with the Houston Rockets organization in the role that he was in with as their general manager and executive vice president of basketball operations there. He has a daughter who he'd like to spend some time with. She's getting ready to head off to college, or she's already in college. Just wanted to spend more time with his family, according to the reports that came out. So I thought that he would have taken a year off from the game, just reset, rebooted, spent some time with the family, and the offers would have came flowing in for him. Because whether you agree with analytics or not, you can't go against the fact that for a large amount of time that he was in Houston, they were a perennial playoff team. And championship or not, you're in the Western Conference, you're a perennial playoff team. There were going to be some people who were going to take a chance on that, and rightfully so. I never thought that he shouldn't have been a general manager or an executive vice president of basketball operations in the NBA. I just thought his time in Houston should have came to an end when it did. I felt like they had gotten everything that they were going to get out of that group. And when you completely just bought into this small ball theory, which I don't know if that was more of Daryl Morey or if that was more of Mike D'Antoni. My guess would be that that was more of Mike D'Antoni, because when I go back and I look at his history in Phoenix, in New York, and what he also tried to do with the Lakers, but their general manager and their ownership wasn't going for that. But at that point, the Lakers were headed for a complete rebuild anyway.
Right.
But he's normally tried to play this small ball, 7 seconds or less offensive system, and it does wonders in the regular season. But when it's time to get to the playoffs and it's not that three-point shooting basketball frenzy and it turns into get me a bucket and get me a stop, it doesn't work very well. So there's no doubt in my mind that Daryl Morey is going to go to Philadelphia and he's going to do a great job. He's got some great stuff to start off to work with. He's got Doc Rivers as a head coach. I believe Doc is going to turn the Sixers around and at least get them close to being an Eastern Conference Finals contender again. I don't believe he's going to get rid of Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid in favor of James Harden, like there are some rumors and reports out there that indicate that. James Harden is 31 years old. Daryl Morey knows that he doesn't need to go older. He needs to try to stay as young as possible. But it helps when some of that youth is experienced as well. They've already been to the playoffs for the past 3 seasons, so you can build upon that. And I have no doubt that a Doc Rivers-led team is going to have some size on it anyway. So the bigs will remain in Philadelphia. I do believe Daryl Morey is going to have good success in Philadelphia. The only concern that I would have in regards to that is the security of Elton Brand as the general manager of that team going forward. He will hold that title for this year, but it's not going to surprise me if he is totally weeded out of the equation after next season is over, because we've already heard things out of Philadelphia with the ownership not necessarily being happy with a lot of the decisions that he has made.
Well, Elton Brand, you only need him around for just a year anyways, so that Daryl Morey can get an idea what he has around him. Usually what will happen in many instances such as this is you keep the holdover around, you learn from the guy, and as Gene Hackman would say in the movie, let's see what hand I've been dealt. So you talk about basically literally an assistant coach in the front office. Once you get your information, then you formulate an opinion whether one, you can work with him, and two, whether he needs to be around. So yeah, he's at least good for a year, if for nothing else, good for a lot of knowledge, but that's about it. So I'm going to talk about another coaching change, which I was reluctant to talk about, but I'm going to do it now anyways, because I think it's probably appropriate since we are talking NBA basketball today. What are your thoughts about Stan Van Gundy landing with the New Orleans Pelicans?
I'm very indifferent about this. His last stop in Detroit with the Pistons was very catastrophic, but his stops in Miami and Orlando earlier in his career, he did some good things with helping develop Dwayne Wade as a young player. He did some good things with helping develop Dwight Howard as a young player. But this is a what have you done for me lately type of business. And the last thing he did lately as a head coach was went to the Detroit Pistons, and it was just an awful mess all the way around. It helps that he's going to the Pelicans and they have a lot of young talent there. But I thought that a better candidate for that job would have been Jason Kidd, to be quite honest with you, Scott, because when he left his head coaching job in Brooklyn where he had all of those Asian vets and he went to Milwaukee and he helped develop Giannis Antetokounmpo into an all-star player. He didn't develop him into he wasn't MVP level Giannis Antetokounmpo yet, but he was an all-star player. Jason Kidd went to Milwaukee and he inherited a team that had only won 15 games the year prior to him being there. His first year of being there, they won 41 games. They went to the Eastern Conference playoffs, and they pushed the Chicago Bulls to 6 games in the first round. That is the type of perfect situation that I thought would have been great for him, and it's something I thought David Griffin would have looked more into. I don't know what they're really looking for here with Stan Van Gundy, besides the fact that he has a history of developing young players in other organizations not named the Detroit Pistons. But this is either going to lead to a better development with Zion Williamson and Lonzo Ball, Josh Hart, and Brandon Ingram, or this is going to be catastrophic. So right now, I don't know where I want to lean towards with that. I just feel indifferent about this hire because I didn't actually expect it to happen.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. The only thing I could say about Stan Van Gundy, outside of the fact that he wrecked the Detroit Pistons with his general manager, president tag, and buried him with the salary cap, is at least he's only going to coach, and David Griffin is the guy shopping for the groceries. That, to me, is one thing. I do feel that Jason Candidate would have been a better candidate, but the guy, I'm really mind-boggled about why he hasn't been hired. I'll never figure it out. It probably reminds me of when Bob Brentley never got hired in baseball, was why Mark Jackson isn't a coach nowadays goes beyond my wildest of imagination. Stan Van Gundy, I guess the only thing he can prove to everybody is Detroit was a bad stop. I'd like an opportunity to redeem myself. He gets it, and we'll see whether he can develop the other players. But I think there were far better candidates than Stan Van Gundy, for sure. I definitely totally agree with you. Jason Kidd I liked, but Mark Jackson to me would have been a much better fit than Stan. But, since we're talking NBA at least one more time, okay, then I want to make sure that we cover all the bases and we don't leave a whole lot of things out. So, yeah, I don't know. They could have done better than Stan. But we'll see. I could be wrong. He does have a good nucleus to work with there, that's for sure. And we'll see how those younger players develop. Even though the Lakers appear on the beginning won the trade by getting Anthony Davis, the New Orleans Pelicans have some building blocks. They really, really do. So I think that this trade constitutes as a win-win situation all the way around. So, we'll see what happens. Now, let's transition over to Steven Silas being hired by the Houston Rockets as their head coach. He learned under Rick Carlisle. He's 20 years in the league, and he also worked under Steve Clifford with Charlotte. Anybody that learns under Rick Carlisle deserves an opportunity to coach in this league. I've always thought in my mind that Rick Carlisle could have won a championship in Detroit. He didn't get the opportunity, put together 2 back-to-back wins of 50. Luckily, the Pistons had a successor in place with Larry Brown, but Rick ended up winning one in Dallas. So what are your thoughts about Steven Silas as the head coach for the Houston Rockets?
It's definitely, I believe it's going to be a good hire for the organization. I just don't know if it's a win right now type of situation. The one name in particular that was floating out there more so than Steven Silas for the past few weeks was Jeff Van Gundy. I thought that if they hired him, that would have been more of a win now situation. When it comes down to the Houston Rockets, the only person I feel like right now that is truly safe in the organization for the time being is James Harden. At some point within the next season or two, I do believe they're going to move off of Russell Westbrook. I do believe that now with Steven Silas, with him coming from Rick Carlisle's system and him coming from the Dallas Mavericks, and also his father being former NBA head coach Paul Silas, who coached a long time in the league as well, there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to rectify that situation of small ball, and they're going to get some bigs in there, somebody who can actually go down low and rebound the basketball and play in the paint and actually have a chance to get a stop against an Anthony Davis as opposed to putting a PJ Tucker on him, who is a very good defensive player, but you can't beat size and you can't beat talented size. That's just the one thing that has to be said about that. So I do believe that situation is going to be rectified. Like I said, I like the hire, but I'm not sure if that's a championship as of right now type of hire. We'll have to see. Luka Doncic was very happy for him and said that he definitely deserves this opportunity to be a head coach, and I agree with that as well. I'm happy to see that it was him or Wes Unseld Jr. that was going to get the shot. I would have liked to see Sam Cassell potentially get that opportunity as well. Just some fresh new blood in some new places instead of bringing in recycled old names that have had chance after chance after chance and they haven't really been able to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Paul Silas play. I'm old enough to say that I have seen Paul Silas play. Hard-nosed player, great basketball mind. If the son, obviously, there's good bloodlines there. We'll see whether Steven can go ahead and get that situation rectified. But there's no way they can win with that small. And they were definitely exposed. As far as Jeff Van Gundy, to me, his style of basketball, I don't think suits the talent or the flash that those players represent. I really don't. His old school mentality, does it rub off on today's players? I don't know, but I think Jeff Van Gundy's smart. Stay in the broadcasting booth. He lives in the Houston area anyways, and there's nothing wrong with being able to do what you do well. Talk about the game that you obviously had success in New York with, as well as throughout the league, and just talk about it instead of going into a situation where today's players, to me, it's a much different animal, and the one that I really have been turned off about.
I agree with you on that. And also, I believe he's playing the game that John Gruden played when he was on ESPN as well. He was going to stay in that broadcast booth until he felt that he had found the perfect situation to allow him to return to the sidelines. Am I saying Jeff Van Gundy is one day going to return to the sidelines with a 10-year, $100 million deal? No, absolutely not. He did not win a championship when he was a head coach. Now, he did some phenomenal things with the New York Knicks in 1999, taking that 8-seeded Knicks team all the way to the finals before the San Antonio Spurs became the San Antonio Spurs dynasty that we've come to know and really respect. But he didn't win a championship, so I don't expect him to get that type of deal. But I do believe that at some point in the next few years, because it keeps coming up more and more, and that's what we saw with John Gruden as well, Scott. The conversation came up more and more. So the more and more the conversation comes up, I do believe that within the next few years, there will be a team and there will be a situation that he will feel suits him perfectly at that point. And I do believe that he will return to the sidelines one day.
Well, I mean, Stan Van Gundy said the only team he was ever going to go to was the New Orleans Pelicans. He didn't need to go back on the sidelines, but he also knew he had to redeem himself a little too. So if you're going to pick your situation, you pick your situation about where you can succeed. You don't want to be put back out there where you can fail. And with all due respect, Jeff Van Gundy, if he feels he belongs in the television booth, it's one thing. But I should point out today, though, that Tony La Russa has been hired by the Chicago White Sox at 76 years old with the White Sox. You want to talk about a splash hire, bringing on some younger, I'm sure he'll bring on a much younger coaching staff to try to bring him up to speed with analytics. But I think Tony figures he's got one last thing to do in the game. I know he started his career as a manager for the Chicago White Sox, but can he adapt to the analytics today? Time will tell. We won't get into that today. But that means if you can come back at the age of 76 years old, then there's hope out there for a lot of the older coaches should they indeed decide to want to come back.
He's definitely got a good young core to go there and work with.
Sure does. So, all right, you talked about Sam Cassell. Why don't we go right to it? Maybe not be ready for him, although I thought Houston would have been a good landing spot since he did some good work over there. I believe he was on the championship teams. Is that correct, Sam Cassell?
Yes, 94 and 95.
So he certainly would have been a good sentimental hire, but he joins Doc Rivers' staff out in Philadelphia. Some thoughts about that?
I'm not surprised that this is happening. I knew that he was not going to remain on Tyronn Lue's staff with the Clippers. Why would I remain on the staff with someone who I was competing with for that job, and they end up getting the job only for me to end up still remaining as an assistant coach? And I'm not even going to be the top assistant coach either, because Chauncey Billups was brought in to do that. So why not go back with what you know, who you've been learning from, until your time to stand in that top spot as a head coach comes? I believe it's a good move on his part, and it's bringing some more championship experience over to the Philadelphia 76ers. And I'm curious to see how this is going to help Ben Simmons get better in particular. Sam Cassell wasn't a superstar point guard, but he was a point guard when he played in the game. He was an all-star caliber point guard for many years of his career. And once again, two-time NBA champion. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen right there, in particular with that dynamic with him and Ben Simmons, and him having a hand in helping develop Ben Simmons' game, in particular on the offensive end, and help him go to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's a point guard. He's a leader. You know, he just has to pay his dues like everybody else. I think the only thing that ever drove me nuts about the NBA was, and I still drives me nuts outside of the Mark Jackson situation, is why Patrick Ewing never got an opportunity to become a head coach. We'll never know. I think that was an injustice. He paid his dues. Sam Cassell will pay his dues. So one other closing thought here. I know Chris Paul. Where do you see him landing at some point?
I do believe that Chris Paul will end up being on the Los Angeles Lakers.
Oh, do you
That's
really?
where I ultimately believe he's going to end up going. I don't believe the Lakers have the personnel and the resources to go out and acquire a player to the talents of Bradley Beal at this time. I don't believe Bradley Beal is going to be in Washington, but I also don't believe he's going to be with the Lakers. Kyle Kuzma, that's not going to be good enough to be the number one piece that's going to help you go out and get a Bradley Beal, because Washington, even though they're in a rebuilding type of situation, they need those players. They need some players that'll help them get back to the playoffs. Oklahoma City doesn't necessarily care about being a playoff team going forward for the next season or two. They have all those draft picks from the Paul George trade for a reason. They were expecting to rebuild. When Chris Paul was traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder as a part of the Russell Westbrook trade, no one, and I mean absolutely no one, maybe outside of Chris Paul, expected them to have the type of season that they had. And now you see them, they fire Billy Donovan as the head coach. That's a clear signal right there. Hey, look, we're restarting this thing, because it didn't work out with Kevin and Russell and James. And, you know, we exercised all that we could with that when we had it, but now it's just time to start over.
So is the Windy City big enough for Billy Donovan and Tony La Russa? I don't think that when you started 2020 that Billy Donovan and Tony La Russa would be in the same area code. That to me is pretty interesting stuff.
I didn't, but here's what I'll say about the Billy Donovan hire, because we didn't speak much on it. The Bulls, they're getting a good one. They're getting a good one who knows how to develop players. And he hasn't coached in college for a few seasons now, but he's inheriting a situation with a bunch of guys who went one and done and still need to have parts of their game developed. And when he was coaching at Florida, he was one of the best player development type of coaches that there was in the game. So I'm excited for him there, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do in Chicago. It's honestly not going to surprise me if Chicago is in the NBA playoffs next year as the 7th or 8th seeded team. They've got a lot of talent there.
I'll just say Billy Donovan's a heck of a coach, period. He's won at every level. What else can I tell you? Won titles with the Gators, and he ended up performing quite well under difficult circumstances with the Thunder, a small market club for sure. So I think, you know, he'll be fine. I think Chicago, Billy Donovan, they're a very interesting team, of course, and I think that the Bulls will be a force to be reckoned with. They'll get that situation on the right track for sure. Any closing thoughts about the NBA that we may have left out?
No, we've covered everything.
All right, well, just so you know, folks are listening to The Real and the Rare. My name is Scott Morganoff, Motor City Badmouth. Xavier McKnight is on the broadcast. We do this, and we will be doing it every week on Thursdays. And I enjoy having Xavier on the broadcast. He's a very good young journalist, has a lot of talented qualities, and I can see him being in our industry for a lot of years. This is an opportunity for two guys that really love talking sports, and more importantly, as we continue to build the real and the rare with our own broadcast, is where our goal is to make sure that the real and the rare tackles more in and out of the sports world. That's how we built it from the beginning, and I expect future episodes to continue to be timely, and I know that that's what we're striving for, right, Xavier McKnight?
Of course.
All right, so with that said, okay, why don't you let everybody know how they can get a hold of you?
All right, you can follow me on Twitter at XTMCKNIGHII, the two I's at the end are capitalized. You can follow me on Instagram at XMCKNIGH22. You can send me a friend request and a follow request on Facebook and LinkedIn just by typing in Xavier McKnight. And you can also find tonight's broadcast, or this afternoon's broadcast, I should say, on my YouTube channel, which will be up later on my YouTube channel that's titled Xavier McKnight.
Very good. And of course, you want to get a hold of us here, you can follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. That's at Tribune South. Facebook and Instagram, South Florida Tribune Gets It Done. Our YouTube channel is South Florida Tribune. I'll give you 6 reasons why you should subscribe to it. Sports Exchange, No Limits, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, Real and the Rare, Fantasy Football, and South Florida Tribune Podcast. Each and every show, is unique in its own way. It caters to lots of different genres. If you want to hear the audio version of the broadcast, you can do so at Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast. You can also find the broadcast on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. We have the Motor City Monitor on there where we talk, since Detroit is my hometown, I do a lot of business up there these days. There are a lot of transplant plants in the area. We have a lot of great content there. We have content from our media distribution partners, as well as our columnists. And of course, you'll find the broadcast on there as well. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth, and I'll be more than happy to connect with you there. So Xavier McKnight, great broadcast. Obviously, we're going to continue to do a lot of good things with it. And I expect this to continue to build the brand a lot more. So why don't you give everybody the COVID message as well as the voting message, and then we'll get ready for the next episode of The Real and the Rare.
Yes. Well, first for the COVID message, I'm starting to see some more negligent and irresponsible activity take place, and that's very concerning, especially when we have Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is continually telling us this is starting to get a little worse once again. And we're now seeing countries in Europe like France and Italy, they're now in their second lockdowns once again. We wonder what's going to happen over here in this nation. We haven't officially undergone a national lockdown, but we saw some periods over this start of this year where things were looking concerning, like were we going to have to lock our country down? And it's very concerning, despite what you see some of our top officials do, no matter what field it is that they work in. Once again, we have to use our own common sense, and we have to use our own minds for how we need to get through this. So please wear your mask, wear your gloves, don't gather in large crowds, continue to practice social distancing. I know things are getting hard for a lot of us out here because of the fact that it's the holiday season, and that's when you want to be gathered up with others, and that's when you want to be around your friends, your families, your loved ones. And I'm not saying not to do those things, but we have to do them more responsibly this year than we've probably done them in the past. That's the only way we're going to get through this. And as far as the voting message goes, please just go out and vote. Use your voice. You have a civic duty to go out and vote. Whoever it is that you choose to vote for, that's your choice. And we're not here to tell you who you need to vote for. That's not what we do here. But we are encouraging you to go out and vote and use your civic duty to do so. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to live in a government system where you have the authority and you have the right to be able to have a voice in who your elected officials would be, as opposed to being a part of a system like a dictatorship where you don't have that choice and whoever you get is whoever you get. So please, let's use our voices. Let's go out and vote. Here in Florida, early voting is still going on now all the way until Sunday. And of course, Election Day is Tuesday. Let's make sure we get our voices heard.
All right. Well, I also want to take the opportunity to congratulate the Los Angeles Dodgers for winning the World Series. More importantly, hats off to Dave Roberts, who became the second Black manager ever to win the World Series. And since we started the broadcast out by talking about Dr. Martin Luther King, Dave Roberts became the first Asian manager as well as the second Black manager to win it. And so congratulations to the Los Angeles Dodgers. You did a marvelous job meeting your expectations and coming home with the prize. I think what's nice about Dave Roberts' accomplishment is it personifies Dr. Martin Luther King, because the Dodgers are the organization that broke the color barrier with Jackie Robinson. So when we start the broadcast out on Dr. Martin Luther King Day, we're going to end it with Dave Roberts as well. So for all those individuals that used to be a little bit critical of Dave Roberts, get off his back. He's got a championship ring and he deserved it quite a bit. So,
and he's going to be in Los Angeles for a very long time.
I think so too. And for you individuals that are wondering what this hat is, Florida Atlantic University Owls, the South Florida Tribune will be providing coverage of the Florida Atlantic University of Texas San Antonio game on Saturday over at FAU Stadium, providing that there are no last-minute cancellations due to COVID-19. we've come to pretty much expect everything these days. Hopefully the game gets out there, but if not, so be it. But it just goes to show you that if the President of the United States can get COVID-19, everybody can. So folks, follow our advice and play it safe. So look forward to next episode of The Real and the Rare, Xavier, and we have some things that want to get done. Let's go out there and take care of it. So folks, have yourself a great week. My name is Scott Morganroth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of The Real and the Rare, the Motor City Madmouth, and
The X Factor, Xavier McKnight.
have a great week, everybody, and catch you next time.